Chapter 15. I landed on both feet on the soft dirt. I knew immediately that it hadn't worked. Lucy's photo was still gripped in my hand. Lucy's hand. Lucy's pudgy little hand. That was all I needed to see to know that my plan had failed. But I examined myself anyway, desperately hoping that somehow I had changed back to me. But no. I was still wearing Lucy's black high-top sneakers, her tights now dirt-stained and torn. I grabbed at my hair. Lucy's hair, shorter and finer textured than mine. Lucy. 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 I needed the real Lucy here with me in order to get my body back. But how could I find her? Where had she escaped to? I yawned wearily. I suddenly realized how exhausted I felt. Every muscle in my body ached. My head throbbed. It took such an effort to hold my eyes open. Yawning again, I lowered myself to the damp ground. I settled back against the wall and shut my eyes. The cold stones pressed against my back and head. With a sigh, I curled up in the dirt and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. I lifted my head, squinting against the morning sunlight. A scrawny, brown rabbit peered suspiciously at me across the dirt. Its nose twitched and its pointed ears arched straight up. With a groan, I pulled myself to a sitting position. The rabbit whipped around, silently vanishing into the tall grass. It took me a few seconds to remember where I was. I brushed dirt and a wet leaf off my arm. My back ached from sleeping on the hard ground. My throat felt dry. I wanted to brush my teeth, brush the sour taste from my mouth. As I stood up, a dozen thoughts jumbled into my head at once. Sleep had cleared my mind, but now the frightening questions rushed back in. Mom and Dad must be frantic, I thought. They must be desperate to know where I am. But now I remembered that I was Lucy, not Nicole. Did Lucy go home to my house? If she did, my parents probably weren't worried at all. They would go off to work this morning, thinking their daughter Nicole was safe and sound. I brushed the hair back off my face. A large black beetle had crawled into my hair during the night. It dropped onto my hand. I tossed it to the ground. I'm a disgusting mess, I realized. I need a shower. I need fresh clothes. I glanced at my watch, a little after 7. My parents left for work promptly at 7:30. It would be easy to sneak up into the house, get myself cleaned up, and change into clean clothes. My clothes would be a little big on Lucy's body, but she and I had traded things before. I stretched, trying to force away the aches, trying to get my muscles working. Then I made my way through the woods to the street. It was a hazy, hot morning. The air felt heavy and still. The morning dew stained my sneakers as I trudged through the grass and weeds. I kept away from the street, keeping low as I walked through the front yards and alleys. A rolled-up morning newspaper in a driveway made me stop. I glanced up at the house. No one seemed to be stirring inside. I picked up the newspaper and began to unroll it. Would Lucy's murders be on the front page? Would the story tell about how the police are on my trail? My eyes swept rapidly over the newspaper. No story on the front page. I pulled the paper open. 2 colorful ad sheets fell onto the driveway. I searched the next pages, and the next. Confused, I folded the paper up and set it back on the driveway. I glanced again at the house, no one watching from the windows. I hurried on, thinking hard. Why weren't the 3 murders reported in the paper? Were the police keeping the story quiet until they had captured me? Was it possible that no one had discovered the Kramers' bodies yet? That was possible, I realized, but the 2 policemen had seen Kent's body, and they had seen me standing over Kent with a kitchen knife in my hand. So why wasn't his murder reported in the paper? The police are keeping it quiet for a reason, I decided. They're waiting till they captured me. Then they'll release the whole story at once. The story seemed to make sense. As much sense as everything else that had happened to me since yesterday. I saw my parents' car backing down the driveway as I turned the corner. I ducked behind the wide trunk of an old maple tree and watched them drive away. My dad wasn't wearing his usual blue suit. He looked a mess. Mom looked worried. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't deal with this now. I had the strong urge to call to them, to go running after them, to cry, "It's me, Mom and Dad. It's really me. I know I don't look like me, but it's me." I wanted to hug them and hold them both close, and tell them what had happened. Tell them the horrors I had seen. Tell them about the murders Lucy had committed in my body. But I knew they wouldn't believe me. My parents are practical, common-sense type people. They're very smart, but they don't have great imaginations. No way they'd believe I was their daughter Nicole. Seeing them drive away made me feel even more desperate and afraid. I sneaked into the house through the kitchen door. I was surprised they had left it unlocked. Then I made my way upstairs. I took a long shower and shampooed my hair 3 times. I wanted to stay under the hot water forever. So warm and cleansing. I nearly burst into tears when I entered my room. It looked so pretty and neat. The bed was made. The clutter on my desk had been straightened. This is my home, I thought with a sob. This is where I belong. But will I ever be able to live in my own house again? I changed into a pair of faded denim jeans and a white t-shirt. I brushed my hair, Lucy's hair, back and fastened it in a ponytail. I spent a long time staring at Lucy's face in my dressing table mirror. Why had I ever agreed to switch bodies with her? Was I that unhappy, that desperately unhappy? As I stared into the mirror, two other faces floated into my mind. Margie and Hannah. Margie and Hannah knew where Lucy had gone. They had to know. They were so eager to keep me from going after Lucy, so eager to keep me from finding her. Lucy must have told them everything. I stood up and stepped away from the mirror. I'll go to school, I said out loud. I'll find Margie or Hannah. I'll make them tell. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand, a little after 8. Homeroom starts at 8:20. Plenty of time to get to school and find one of them. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to leave my room, but I knew I had no choice. I took all the money I kept in my top dresser drawer, about $40 in fives and singles, and jammed it into my jeans pockets. In the kitchen, I grabbed a cherry Pop-Tart from the box and ate it cold. I slugged down some orange juice from the carton, took another Pop-Tart for the road. Then I made my way out of the house, being careful to close the kitchen door securely behind me. Margie and Hannah, Hannah and Margie. Their faces hovered in front of me as I hurried to school. Margie was in my homeroom. I wasn't sure about Hannah. I thought she was somewhere on the second floor near the music room. Walking quickly, my heart pounding excitedly, I turned the corner onto Park Drive. The front of the red brick high school came into view. Most kids were already inside, but a few latecomers were hurrying to the front doors. I started to jog up the long walk to the entrance. Halfway there, I stopped when I saw the two gray figures on either side of the doors. The two gray-suited police officers, watching everyone, waiting for me. Did they see me? Chapter 16. I turned sharply, began walking toward the street, not running, but taking long, rapid strides. The North Shadyside bus pulled up to the stop in front of the high school. I hurried to the bus, planning to jump on. But the bus was filled with kids arriving for school. They piled off one by one, blocking my escape. Were the two officers chasing after me? I didn't dare glance back. Hurry! Hurry! I silently urged the kids jumping down from the bus. Luckily, none of my friends was on board. Finally, I climbed into the bus. The doors closed behind me. The driver turned the wheel and the bus pulled away from the curb. I turned, lowered my head, trying to see out the glass door. The two officers remained at their posts at the school entrance. They hadn't spotted me. I turned to see the driver, an old man with a red face and bright blue eyes, squinting at me suspiciously. Shouldn't you be in school? He asked, slowing at a stop sign. I'm sick, I lied. I realized I didn't have any change. Just the money I had jammed into my jeans pocket. Pull over, I cried, please. The driver frowned, but obediently pulled the bus to the curb. I'd better get out, I stammered. He opened the door. I leaped down to the street. Sorry, I called back to him, but he had already closed the door behind me. I watched the bus roar away. Then I gazed around. I had traveled exactly 1 block, just far enough to escape the eyes of the two policemen. But now what? I still needed to talk to Margie or Hannah. I can't spend the rest of my life running from those two cops, I told myself unhappily. I have to find Lucy. Fast. I crept back toward the school, thinking hard. I wondered if there were officers at the back, too. Keeping behind a tall hedge, I made my way toward the back of the school. Hey, what are you doing there? I let out a startled cry. Turning, I saw a woman holding a garden hose in the middle of the yard. What are you doing in my yard? Sorry, I called to her. I'm just going to school. This isn't a shortcut, she called sharply. I hurried through a break in the hedge out to the sidewalk. The back of the school was guarded too, I saw. 2 other officers had been posted at the door across from the student parking lot. I ran across the street and pressed up close to the tall fence that ran along the football stadium. I stopped there to catch my breath. I could hear the first bell ring. The kids were all inside now, except for a boy frantically pedaling his bike toward the bike rack. Keeping in the shadow of the fence, I took a few steps closer to the back of the school. I had a good view of the 2 officers. They were shaking their heads, frowning as I talked, giving up. They thought I'd show up for school and they'd grab me, I decided. But now they're giving up in disappointment. I was right. I watched them step away from the back doors. They disappeared around toward the front. probably joining the other two officers. I waited a few seconds, making sure they weren't returning. Then I made a wild dash to the building. I had a plan to see Margie. I pulled open the back door and ducked inside. It took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to the dim light of the corridor. The hall was empty. Everyone had gone into their homerooms. The second bell rang as I crept to the gym, just around the corner to the right. I pushed open the door and hurried inside. No one there. The gym already felt like an oven, first thing in the morning. Glancing up at the bleachers, I saw that one end of a Go Tigers banner had come loose. The banner tilted over the top seats. My sneakers squeaked over the polished floor as I trotted to the girls' locker room. Margie had gym fourth period, same as me. My plan was to hide in the locker room until then. Then I would pull Margie aside and confront her, force her to tell me where Lucy was. I pulled open the locker room door and stepped inside. The room felt cooler than the gym. I heard the plink, plink of water dripping in the shower room. Where to hide? I hurried past the rows of wooden benches and dark lockers. Someone had left a black high-top sneaker on the floor, and I stumbled over it. At the back wall stood a small equipment closet. The door was half open. I pulled it open all the way and peered inside. Empty. Glancing down, I thought I saw a dead mouse curled up on the closet floor. But as I squinted at it, I realized it was a clump of dust. I heard voices behind me at the locker room door. Moving quickly, I slipped into the empty closet and pulled the door almost closed. I backed into the darkness until I pressed up against the closet wall. The air smelled stale and sour. I left the door open a crack. Now I heard more voices, girls' voices that I recognized. The shuffle of feet, the clatter of gym lockers being opened. They were getting changed for first period gym. This is going to be a long wait, I told myself with a silent sigh. But it will be worth it if I can find Margie and force her to tell me about Lucy. I carefully lowered myself to a sitting position on the closet floor. My hand fell over the clump of dust. I brushed it away. I knew that no one would open the closet door and discover me. There was no reason for anyone to go into this closet. Locker doors slammed. The room became quieter as girls headed out to the gym. I could hear the thump of basketballs. I heard Mrs. Hawkins' whistle blow. Leaning back against the closet wall, I shut my eyes and let myself be swallowed up by the darkness. It was already starting to get hot and sticky inside the closet, but I didn't dare step out. There were always girls coming in and out of the locker room once the day started. I can make it till fourth period, I assured myself. I decided the wait would give me some quiet time to think about Lucy and why she murdered the three people she cared about most, to try to figure out why she hated me so much, why she left me to take the blame. The hours passed. Girls changed and played basketball, then changed again to go to their next class. But I didn't think of any answers. It was as if the answers hovered just beyond my reach, just beyond a thick wall of fog, and no matter how I struggled, I couldn't clear away the fog. When the fourth period bell finally rang, I shook away my confused thoughts and climbed to my feet. I listened to the girls' voices as they piled into the locker room, voices I knew so well. I could hear Margie kidding around with two other girls, so near. She was so near I knew I could push open the closet door, reach out and grab her. But I waited. Margie was always one of the last to change, always one of the last to leave the locker room. I hoped she would linger behind today. I hoped I could confront her without a dozen other girls in the way. I pressed both hands against the door, preparing to spring out. I listened hard. I had to catch her before she ran out to the gym. My heart started to pound. The voices all blended together in my ears. I tried to shut them all out, all except Margie's. A shrill cry made my heart jump. I heard other frightened cries, shuffling noises, loud shouts, the thud of running feet. What has happened? I wondered. What is all the commotion? I pushed open the closet door and plunged out into the locker room. I saw a cluster of girls in their gym shorts and t-shirts. Their faces were tight with fear. They were gaping down at a girl on the floor. A girl sprawled on her back on the locker room floor. Margie? I cried. Yes, it was Margie. Chapter 17. I pushed into the circle of girls. No one seemed to notice me. They all stared down at Margie. Margie raised herself high enough to grab her left calf. Her face twisted in pain. Oh, wow, she cried. These leg cramps are the worst. You just don't want to play today, another girl joked. You don't want to get sweaty because it's class photo day. Everyone laughed, tense laughter. You really scared me when you screamed like that, someone told Margie. I frightened myself, Margie groaned, rubbing the calf. It's starting to feel a little better. I took a step back, then another. No one had noticed me yet. They all leaned over Margie. 2 girls helped her to her feet. Margie hobbled to a low wooden bench and sat down. I slipped back behind the closet door. I heard Miss Hawkins' whistle blow out in the gym. Go ahead, Margie told the others. I'm okay. I'll be out in a second. This is a lucky break for me, I thought. About time I had a lucky break. I waited for the others to leave. Then I stepped out quickly. Hi, Margie. Bent over, rubbing her leg. She sat up with a start. Nicole! Her face filled with surprise. You're here? I moved in front of her. Ready to stop her, she tried to run. I pressed my hands against my waist. Where's Lucy? I demanded. My voice came out in a choked whisper. Huh? Margie pretended she didn't hear me. I need to find Lucy, I said through gritted teeth. I'm not kidding around, Margie. You know where Lucy is, and I need to find out. I have to get her to switch bodies back. Margie raised herself to her feet. She winced in pain. I guessed her leg muscle was still cramped. Nicole, sit down, she said softly. She pointed to the bench. I couldn't read her expression. Was it fear? Was she thinking frantically? Trying to think of how to stall me? How to keep me from finding Lucy? I don't want to sit down, I said coldly. I want to find Lucy, right away. I wanted to get out of her body, Margie, and you're going to help me. Margie bit her lower lip. Her dark eyes locked onto mine. I could see her studying me, trying to decide just how serious I was. I needed her help so badly. I felt so desperate, so angry and frightened and desperate, all at the same time. Suddenly, the words just came bursting out of me. Margie. She took me into the woods, I said, squeezing Margie's bare arm. She took me to the changing wall. We switched bodies. She told you all this, right? She told you? Margie didn't reply. She continued to stare at me. I could see that she was thinking hard. But she didn't tell you about the murders, I continued, holding onto her arm. She didn't tell you she killed her parents and she killed Kent. That's why I have to get my body back. Do you understand? Do you understand why you have to help me? I saw her swallow hard. She gently removed her arm from my grasp. Changing wall? She murmured. I'll take you there, I told her. I'll show you. I'll show you where we switched. But then her eyes narrowed. Nicole, if I go with you, will you make me a promise? She asked, speaking softly and slowly, as if talking to a child. Promise? I demanded suspiciously. I didn't trust her. She had already helped Lucy escape once. What kind of promise? She rubbed the back of her calf. If I go with you to the changing wall, will you come back here with me? Will you come back here with me and sit tight until I get your parents? No, I answered quickly. I can't see my parents until I have my body back. I have to know where Lucy is. You can't keep it from me any longer. Her mouth dropped open, but she didn't reply. Do you know where Lucy is? I screamed, losing control. Do you? Yes, she admitted. But, Nicole... The locker room door swung open. I heard voices, footsteps. Uttering a low cry, I slipped back into the closet. I tried to pull the door closed only part way, but I pulled too hard, and the door clicked shut. The voices on the other side were muffled. I couldn't make out the words. I figured someone had come in to check on Margie to see if she was okay. What bad timing, I thought bitterly, trying to calm my pounding heart. Margie had just confessed that she knew where Lucy was. She was about to tell me where I could find her. I pressed against the door, listening hard. Was Margie telling the intruder about me? Was she telling the other girl to go get Miss Hawkins? Was she planning to trap me in this closet, to keep me here, and to go get my parents? No. Please, I silently begged. Please, Margie. Please don't betray me like Lucy did. I pressed harder against the door, trying to hear what they were saying. But the room was silent now. Had the other girl left? I clicked the closet door, pushed it open slowly, and peeked around it. No! I uttered a hoarse cry as I saw Margie, on her back on the floor again. Chapter 18. Not a leg cramp this time. I saw the puddle of blood widening around her, saw that her head had been crushed in, her skull cracked, her cheek bashed in, one eye smashed shut, saw the shot put on the floor beside her, the blood-smeared shot put, and I knew that Lucy had struck again. Lucy had crept into the locker room and murdered Margie, crushed her head with a shot put, crushed her, and walked back out. My entire body convulsed in a violent shudder. I forced myself to turn away from the gruesome sight. Lucy, how could you? The question burned into my mind. How could you kill so coldly? Miss Hawkins' shrill whistle from the other side of the locker room snapped me back from my horrifying thoughts. I raised my eyes to the door. Someone is going to come in here, I realized. Someone is going to see me. Someone is going to find me standing here over Margie's battered body. I spun around, fighting back my panic. The locker room had 2 doors. One led to the gym. The other led out to the hall. I had no choice. I turned and hurried out into the hall. I stopped just outside the door and glanced both ways. No one there. I took a deep breath and started to run. I had to get out of the building without being seen. I ran full speed. I practically flew. I prayed that no one would come around the corner and recognize me. Please, please let me get away. A few seconds later, I hurtled through the back doors and ran across the student parking lot. I didn't stop running until I was 2 blocks from the school. Then I collapsed on the tall grass in an empty lot, my sides aching, my temples throbbing. I sat with my mouth open, panting like a dog, sweat running down my cheeks. Lucy is following me. She's following me everywhere I go. The thought broke into my mind. I felt a cold shiver run down my back. Why hadn't I realized it before? I visited Kent, and then she killed Kent. I came to see Margie, and then she killed Margie. Without realizing it, I jumped to my feet. I cupped my hands around my mouth and shouted, "Lucy, are you here?" My voice came out hoarse and breathless. I received no answer. "Lucy, can you see me? Are you watching me?" I screamed. "I know you're here. Where are you, Lucy?" No answer. I dropped back onto the grass. My head was spinning. I felt so frightened and so completely alone. I had no idea what to do next. I wandered around most of the day. I didn't even remember where I had been or what I'd been thinking. Did I eat any lunch or dinner? I didn't remember. At dark, I found myself back at the gray stone wall in the Fair Street woods. I don't know why I kept returning there. Maybe I figured Lucy might show up. Of course that didn't happen. I pressed against the wall and drifted into another deep, dreamless sleep. At dawn, I awoke with a face in my mind. A round, pleasant face, a pale face surrounded by short curls of salt and pepper hair. The face of Lucy's grandmother. I sat up and stretched. My whole body ached from sleeping on the hard ground. My clothes felt damp from the morning dew. Slowly, I climbed to my feet and brushed myself off. A huge red ball of a sun still hung low over the trees. The air carried a morning coolness. The smiling face of Lucy's grandmother lingered in my mind. When Lucy wasn't getting along with her parents, which was a lot of the time, she always went to visit Grandma Carla. Lucy and her grandmother were very close. Is Lucy finished following me around? I wondered. Now that she has murdered 4 people in my body, has she decided to make her escape? I remembered that she'd taken all of the clothes from her bedroom closet. That meant she planned to go away somewhere, and Grandma Carla's farm seemed the most logical place she would go. Of course, if Lucy went there, Grandma Carla would see my body and think it was me, but she wouldn't find it unusual for me to visit. Lucy and I had spent parts of our summer vacations up there. Grandma Carla was like a grandmother to me, too. As I made my way out of the woods, I struggled to remember the small farm town where Grandma Carla had her farm. Conklin. The name popped into my mind. Yes, Conklin. I reached into my jeans pocket and pulled out the wad of bills I had grabbed from home, all of my savings. I counted it as I walked. Yes, more than enough money to get some breakfast, and then buy a bus ticket to Conklin. I turned the corner onto Mill Road. I saw Alma's, the little coffee shop across the street. I'll use the restroom to get cleaned up, I decided. I'll buy some breakfast, and I'll hurry to the bus station. Crossing the street, I suddenly felt a little more hopeful. I had a strong hunch, a real premonition. Somehow, I knew that I was about to find Lucy at last. The bus to Conklin didn't leave until 2 in the afternoon. Then the driver had to stop to fix a flat tire a few miles north of Waynesbridge. As we bumped over the narrow highway that led through the small farm towns, I began to feel more and more nervous. What shall I say to Grandma Carla? I wondered. Of course, I'll have to pretend to be Lucy. She wouldn't understand about our switching bodies, and she's so frail I don't want to give her a shock. So I'll pretend to be Lucy, and I'll ask if Nicole is visiting. And then what? I asked myself. What will Lucy do when she sees I've caught up to her? Will she run again? Will she try to kill me too? My best friend. Staring out at the endless green fields, I kept thinking how Lucy was my best friend. Best friend. Best friend. I repeated the words in my mind until they had no meaning. Grandma Carla's farm stood a little less than a quarter mile from the Conklin bus stop. I watched the bus rumble away and began to walk along the soft, grassy shoulder of the narrow highway. Wildflowers bloomed in the field to my left. The tall grasses swayed in a soft breeze. A column of silvery gnats rose up in front of me. The gnats, thousands of them, circled wildly, silently, like a soft, silver cyclone. I stepped onto the road to walk around them. A few seconds later, Grandma Carla's barn came into view. It had been painted white at one time. I remembered it sparkling in the sunlight as Lucy and I ran inside to explore and climb the hay bales. But now the paint was cracked and peeling, the dark boards showing through. Behind the barn stood the old farmhouse. A 2-story white structure. The house had seemed enormous when Lucy and I were kids, but now it looks like a small, old-fashioned house with its open back porch and shuttered windows. "Lucy, are you in there?" I murmured as I eased myself over the rail fence and started across the tall grass of the backyard to the house. "Lucy, I'm coming. I know I'm going to find you now." I stepped up onto the back porch, the old boards creaking under my sneakers. I made my way to the kitchen and knocked loudly on the door.